Hello everyone, my name is Jorge Diaz, president and founder of Larry Jacob Internet Marketing, and I'm bringing you another episode of How Do You Define Infusionsoft Success. So I've got Mr. Kelsey Bratcher there, smiling away at his desk there. We just kicked his wife out of the office because she was in the background and felt a little self-conscious, but we've got him all to ourselves now. So Kelsey and I are going to be talking about using Zapier as part of an Infusionsoft solution. When's it a good idea? When maybe it's not a good idea. But before we do that, Kelsey, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into this Infusionsoft consulting space?
Sure. So back in 2008, I got a job at Infusionsoft, and my job there was implementation manager at the time. This was when Infusionsoft was $5,000 up front and $299 a month. You got all kinds of stuff. But they didn't have, it was blue, I'll say that. So Infusionsoft was blue back in 2008 in comparison to what it is now in 2016. And that was my first kind of step and foray into small business and
so
internet marketing and marketing automation.
When you say it's blue, they didn't have their green branding now is what you mean, right?
No, I'm saying it was, Infusionsoft, the logo had a red like Nike symbol in it kind of thing. No. Was it Nike? It was like it had three swooshes.
Yeah.
And then it was Infusion Software. It was what the sign said on the building when I started working there. And then also the software itself was a blue color. Like all the menus and things like that were blue, or like this light color blue. And then shortly after that, that was when the black bar at the top. And then I don't know if anyone recalls the setup menu, but that was pretty much like the only menu that you would use in the entire software when setting it up. Everything was on there. And so it's become, today, in comparison, if you were to look back, I mean, you wouldn't even be able to tell that it was Infusionsoft. That's when I started using it, and then so I started helping Infusionsoft customers get implemented, and I worked at Infusionsoft for 5.5 years before I left and started Hired Gun Solutions, which I am now the founder of. And what we do is we help Infusionsoft users, some certified partner like you, George, and I do more of the, I don't even know how to explain it very well, other than I help people use the software to a much higher extent. And probably like my greatest accomplishment is in 2015, my client, Home Painters Toronto, Brian Young, was a small business icon from InfusionCon, or Icon, depending on what you want to call it. And so that's kind of brings me to today. I've been over the past, since Zapier came out, or Zapier, however you say it, I think it's Zapier. I was working at Infusionsoft when they started, right? And so I've signed up for an account way back when, so that way I could, understand, like, okay, all these new tools are coming out, everything's got APIs.
Sure.
I don't want to learn how to code. That was really the big thing, is that I don't want to learn how to code well enough to do what these tools do, and nor do I want to spend the time that way. And so I started getting into Zapier to solve little simple problems, to getting into more complex. And now that as the software, Infusionsoft and Zapier and a bunch of other tools out there have started kind of becoming mainstream with being able to connect to each other, and Zapier becoming more and more powerful after, almost weekly they're coming out with an update to existing Zaps or adding new stuff to the tool that's really make it very, very interesting and very powerful.
Okay,
especially for Infusionsoft users.
Right, and I've used it. Like I was mentioning before when we were preparing, I've had customers that already had Zapier as part of their solution. So, I jumped in and I learned. But give a couple examples of things that you can do with Zapier that people might want to use.
So I would say, just really simple tasks right off the bat, and simple things like when a new contact comes into your Infusionsoft account and you want to be able to email that person, well, why not have it add that person to your Google contacts at the same time without creating a duplicate? So it'll look up the person by their email address and add them to Google contacts if they're not already in there. And then also, if they become a customer, to put them in your customer list in Google Contacts. So that way when you go to type someone's, and I type in Jorge, that your name pops up because you were in my Infusionsoft account first, rather than, and that way I don't have to do any copy and pasting. I mean, that's just a really simple
Right. So
thing to save time.
talk about super convenient. Now it's on my cell phone also, so I can find it right away.
And it just basically, because I connect everything to my Google Contacts account,
Yeah.
or my Google account, which is my calendar, my Google Contacts, my Google Drive, Google Sheets. All of these things are very easily manipulated. And another example is when a new client comes on board, I have it automatically create a folder for them in my Google Drive so that I don't have to do that. It's a really simple thing. It's like, well, why don't you just create the folder because then I have to remember to do that every single time I get a new customer, and it saves me. It creates a consistent. I just go here to get that information.
Well, and I tell you what, like
that's another example of.
Yeah, and for example, we come up and we create a credentials folder, a credentials spreadsheet for all of our clients, and so I would also create like a default credential folder. Now that, okay, I'm already going to start doing a few of these things. So it's a convenience tool.
Oh, well, I mean, it's more than that, but that's just so you can kind of wrap your head around it.
Right.
Because when take it to the next level, you can, I mean, there's 500 plus, I think it's almost over 600 now, maybe even higher. I could be completely wrong, but different apps that it connects to. I mean, some of them are whatever, but like another thing that I was going to mention is Google Calendar. Like right now, you could have Infusionsoft's Google Gmail calendar integration, but it's really not quite what people want, and it doesn't really do what I want. So I make I made Zapier. Whenever there's an appointment created in Infusionsoft, I have it replicate it to my Google account, and then I have it. If I update or my Google Calendar, then it will update it in Infusionsoft, and vice versa.
Nice.
Because you can make there's a search feature that used to not be in there, just would add. So like it would create a new appointment every time. So if someone rescheduled, it would keep the original intact and then create another one, right?
Right.
Now you have the ability to search for a pre-existing appointment. So this could be like an appointment that has a certain invitee, or maybe you have the contact ID in Infusionsoft inside that Google Calendar appointment. So you can have it update that and change the dates or whatever you want it to do. And that's another example of how I've been using it. And I mean, to put that together, it's a little bit like you have to think about, if I change the appointment, then how do I make that happen? Right. And then there's a couple of tests you have to run. But really, the big thing about that is that Zapier will actually tell you that something went wrong, right? You'll get an email saying the Zap didn't work, and then that's how you know that if something went wrong or haywire. And that could go. That's because you have Infusionsoft and you have Zapier and then you have another tool, and all three of those APIs and connections have to be working together. Otherwise, you're going to run into a log jam somewhere, right? Well, and so that's why Zapier is really nice, because it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just listening to you, and it's like these. I mean, they seem. I'm sure in Zapier it's not hard to build these, but I didn't even think to do those kind of things. So that's pretty cool.
Right. Well, see, I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, so this is for $20 a month. This is what you get. Right?
Yeah, because they don't charge you. They don't, right? Because they don't charge you per Zap, do they? I mean, they don't charge you per Zap, are they?
Not technically. Not technically. You get 20 for 20, so $1 a Zap, and then you get 3,000 what's called a task, which means those 20 Zaps can run 3,000 times. And then for the next tier is $50 a month, and it goes from 20 to 50 and 15,000. Right? So these are your thresholds.
Right.
And I run one $50 a month account. I have almost every single one of my clients that I actively work with has at least one Zap inside my Zapier account, because you can connect as many Infusionsoft accounts as you want. Oh. So from a certified partner perspective, if it's the customer to be getting the Zapier account because maybe they only need one thing and it's not worth $20 a month to them, right?
Right.
So while I'm not going to use, that thing's not going to happen enough to offset my thresholds, so I can throw it at them and just include it as part of my offering to them,
Sure,
to be
sure.
able to serve them better. The Google Calendar thing people really seem to like. But that's like a simple example. But you can connect as many Google accounts as you want, as many Infusionsoft accounts, and I have probably at 200 plus connections in my Zapier account
Wow.
right now between the apps that I use and what I have for my clients' accounts, right? And so that's
Right. So okay.
cool
So let me
stuff.
ask you. So when is it that? Because I tell you, except for the couple of clients that already had it, and then we just had to kind of keep using it, and
Mm-hmm.
interacting with it. When is it that you say, you know what? I think Zapier is going to be a solution that I need for, and not just like the Google stuff, but I think Zapier is the right solution versus something else, or versus trying to get Infusionsoft to
So
do it.
I would, well, and it's all relative to what you want it to do, right?
Sure, sure.
So you have to look at the family of tools that exist for certain things, right? So you have like My Fusion Helper, and plus this, and you have Zapier, and you have all these other tools that kind of do. There's some overlap, right? Like
Sure, sure.
with Zapier, I like to make sure everyone's first name and last name are capitalized with proper casing, right? Well, there's 10 different tools in the Infusionsoft marketplace that do that, but none of them are $20 a month, and none of them also do all the other things, right? So
Yeah.
I would say, and Zapier is something that can do with that. So I would say, every single Infusionsoft customer should be using it or figuring out how they could,
Right.
because everyone uses either Office 365 or Google apps, right?
Right.
There's some people use like GoDaddy email servers, but those are like the two most common, and it works with both of those tools. So like even just with that and making stuff talk to each other the right way is going to be worth $20 a month. But if you take it into the like, okay, well, what other apps do I use? I use Asana. I use Evernote. I use Schedule Once for my calendars for like sending people to book appointments. I use GoToMeeting or Zoom. Infusionsoft. I use those are just at the top of my head. I use Full Contact
Right.
for keeping my address book up to date. And so these are all apps that work with the Zapier tool, and they can all trigger stuff from one to the next depending on what the workflow is. So you can you can also chain things together and create your own little custom sequences, kind of like in Infusionsoft from within Zapier.
Mm-hmm.
To when like in Infusionsoft, someone buys my service, I'm creating a Google contact for them. I'm creating a Google folder for them. Or a Google Drive folder. I'm going to add an Evernote file for them. And it's just a chain of things that happen.
No, right.
Every single time
You can create a project,
one of my customers.
So you can create a project inside of Asana to do that, as to keep track of whatever specific project work you're doing.
Correct. That's another perfect example is using Asana. Now, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is more workflow stuff.
No, it is, but it could really make life easy for people.
And you can also do more automated things, right? So the Google, like with Google Sheets, if you wanted to build a spreadsheet, instead of going to Infusionsoft and exporting or Save Search, and then copying it or putting it in Excel and editing it and all this other stuff, and then doing that every single time you want to do something, just make a Google Sheet, or you can even do it with Excel now, where it basically adds a row to a spreadsheet automatically. And then if that changes, if you set it up correctly, it'll change. It'll look it up and say, oh, this person with this email address changed this row value to like 153 or whatever the new value is, right?
Right.
So you can have it manipulating your spreadsheet. It's up to date, and you don't have to do any of that crap anymore.
So it'll synchronize. It'll synchronize your data.
There's a lot of automation.
Wow.
Oh yeah, and drawback is on a $20 a month plan. It's a 15-minute. Depending on there's two kinds of primary zaps that I've figured out. There's ones that are, well, there's more than that, but think of it as like, okay, there's zaps that run instantly, and then there are zaps that run on an interval, right? So a lot of
like
Infusionsoft are run on an interval. yeah, batched in like 15-minute increments, depending on what tier of Zapier you're paying for.
Sure.
And then there are instant things that happen. So actually, here's a perfect thing that a lot of Infusionsoft users are using Gravity Forms these days for connecting Gravity Forms to Infusionsoft. But they're all using that free plugin that's on for WordPress. And like the free plugin's great, but it's a guy that built it for like almost fun. People started using it. It's not perfect because it's not like his primary source of income.
Right.
So he doesn't update it as often as it maybe should, and there's some bugs and things like that. I'm not saying it's bad.
Yeah.
But Zapier is a native Gravity Forms integration, and that is a perfect use case for it, is to solve that Gravity Forms to Infusionsoft problem and solve it very well.
So someone fills out
because
a form.
That happens instantaneously via like webhook or post.
So someone comes up and fills out. So someone comes up and fills out a Gravity form, and it automatically just gets that information into Infusionsoft, kicks off campaigns, and you don't have to worry about basically getting HTML to talk between the two.
Right.
Nice.
Correct. I mean, there's a massive. I mean, this is a topic that could be daydreamed about for a long time, because it's just, there's so much that it could do, and it's just a matter of thinking about it in a way. Is like, well, what do I currently use in my business? What am I copying and pasting all the time? What am I, having to go create folders? All these tasks that you have to do. That one, if you don't remember doing them, they don't happen consistently, or if there's another teammate that has to do that, you got all kinds of little things that could go wrong. And so the way that I stay organized is because I automate the things that happen. And Zapier is probably one of the most critical pieces of my tool belt to make that happen, next to Infusionsoft.
I tell you what, I would not have expected that. I mean, especially because I know you to be like really technical, and on the front of it, Zapier doesn't strike me as being a technical tool, because it's not intended to be. But here you are using it really as a critical tool for a lot of things.
No, it's I mean, at this point, like, I don't even take software seriously for my business unless it works with Zapier first, because otherwise I might be like, oh, well, what if it doesn't do something that I want it to do? And, if it doesn't, then I can make it happen if I have Zapier. But if it doesn't do it, it doesn't have that connection, now I'm having to worry about it and like think about, like, well, that's something I have to think about. Does it work well with my existing stack of tools that I have? I don't. It really makes it hard to want to buy something that doesn't work with.
Well, there's another reason. I mean, it's almost it's part of your standard. If it doesn't fit that, it doesn't come. I get you. By the way, afterwards, now that you mentioned that, I've got one more thing. I got a customer. I think I may.
Sure.
This might be a solution for that. Basically, they're a GoToMeeting customer, and I'm sure it integrates with that.
There are things. It does, and it makes it webinars. You can have it do the webinar sync thing that a lot of people want to be able to do, like attendance and all that. Someone attends a webinar, and make it really. I believe it's pretty easy. You can make it technical, but it's pretty easy for a normal person to be able to go and understand what's happening. Because they use a lot of, like, every time a new contact is created in Infusionsoft, you have to kind of know what that means, but that's normal jargon. It's not a bunch of programmer stuff.
Right.
And it makes it a lot easier digestible for a normal person to be able to achieve some cool results. One other consideration is anytime that there's, like, the thing that Zapier is really good at is detecting changes and taking action on that, and then keeping a massive log or history of all the things that have happened, and that error checking, right, is one of my favorites.
Yeah, because a lot of these tools will do their changes, but you never know what errors occurred. So if it fails, you're kind of like just crossing your fingers and hope it doesn't fail.
Right, and I mean, you guys have done enough Memberium and iMember 360 stuff.
Yeah, that's
to know that HTTP posts from Infusionsoft are not the most reliable thing in the world. And because there's a lot of stuff that could go wrong
Sure.
to cause, it could be an Infusionsoft problem, it could be WordPress hosting, it could be a patch, it could be all kinds of things.
Well, right. The server could
and
be out for a
Zapier
little bit
kind
of
of
time.
provides little happy middlemen.
What do you know?
Yeah, well, and the other thing is, so for the $20 a month one, it'll just tell you that something went wrong and then give you the ability to go in and fix it yourself. But for the $50 a month one, it'll try to automatically fix it if something went wrong. So it'll send you an email saying something went wrong, and it'll try again when it, you know what I mean? So it can do a lot of really cool stuff. Like, for example, I was using Typeform to do something. It's kind of like Gravity Forms, and they had an outage today. Well, Zapier let me know that. That's how.
Well, and then let me ask you, if
Zapier was able.
If it's out, will it also like batch them and say I'll try them again later?
It will.
Nice.
I believe so. I believe it will. I can't talk to that specifically.
We're not going to hold you liable for that one, Kelsey.
It'll show you a massive queue. Have to email their support and figure that out. But that's the other thing, is their support is pretty badass too. Like, you can actually ask them questions and they'll answer it, and like they'll help you out if you get stuck. Cool. And they're really knowledgeable, because that's all they do every day. Help people connect stuff together.
Cool. Well, hey.
Oh, there's one last thing I'll say about Zapier.
Right. This is like the Zapier commercial.
Get on their newsletter. Yeah. You'd think I'd be working for them if I just didn't like their product so much.
Right.
So like they have a newsletter, right? But they don't sell anything in the newsletter. They just do content, and it's top notch. Like, there's a guide. They just had basically they compile all these articles that they put together about Google Sheets and how you can use it for all kinds of different things. And they have like the complete guide to Google Sheets. And it's like just probably the most informative Google Sheets thing I've ever read, because it provides, it's not just like, this is how this function works. It's like, here's a thing that you could do. Here's the steps that you go through to do it. And it introduces a whole lot of concepts I think a lot of people would ever encounter if they weren't thinking about it that way. And it's completely free. So I get email like at least once or twice a week from them, and I read all of them, because there's always some treasure idea that I can get from there.
Wow. Well, cool. Well, I tell you what, Kelsey, this is not what I expected. This is not what I expected, because I know we spoke about 2 months ago. Hey, I got to get you on the program. All right. And I know I learned something. I'm going to actually start experimenting with Zapier, because I haven't touched it probably in 6 months since the last time this customer asked me to do something. So, hey, thank you so much. If people want to reach you, Kelsey, give them your URL. How can they find you?
Sure. I'm on hiredgunsolutions.com. I say singular gun, plural solutions kind of thing.
And, when we publish
hiredgunsolutions.com, and I have have a link.
Yeah. When I publish this, I'm going to make sure I'll provide a link so people can find you if they need to find a Zapier guru. So, hey.
Sure. Now, there's one last thing, because the title of this thing is Infusionsoft Success, right? Defining Infusionsoft Success. So what I found why Zapier is nice in that context is because it enables Infusionsoft users to better use the software in areas where it may not do that. And so if you're in order to be successful with Infusionsoft, you have to use it. And it makes it a heck of a lot easier to use it if it works well with the other stuff that you're using.
Makes sense.
So that would be my contribution. So, yeah.
Okay, Kelsey.
Sorry to cut you off there.
No, hey, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate all that you've shared. We've gone a little bit over on time, but that's okay. Thanks again.
Yeah, no problem, George. Thank you.
Yeah, it didn't surprise me that we went over on time, Kelsey. That's okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm a talker.